Star Wars is one of my favorite series of all time, and recently, Star Wars Battlefront has become the talk of the town. Breaking its record for most players since launch on Steam, Battlefront 2 is even more popular now than it was during 2020, and anyone who remembers that year and its contents will remember why this is a big deal. So big that even I've been playing it. And so, in the spirit of Battlefront 2 and hopes that EA will see all of our dedication and either release a third Battlefront or revive Battlefront 2, I decided now would be a good time to do a sort of funny timeline for Star Wars. Anyway, hashtag Battlefront 3. Let's get started. But first, welcome to the Amagi. Before we begin, only 25% of our viewers are subscribed, so if you're a fan of the video, please like and double check if you are subscribed. And with that out of the way, let's get into the video. Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, there were tariffs on trade. Well, a little bit different, but it seems relevant to talk about it now. Anyway, the Republic, basically the government of the entire galaxy, decided it was a good idea to tax trade routes, and so Nintendo, Disney, and Walmart got together under the name the Trade Federation and decided to peacefully protest this taxation without representation by invading Space Italy. I forget why they chose Naboo. Maybe because Palpatine told them to, because it was his home? It was very rich in stuff. Culture. Padme lived there too, so maybe it was all planned out from the beginning. Well, the Republic decided to send two very peaceful peacekeeping monks who study this crazy energy field that binds the galaxy together and told them to lean on the Trade Federation. The Trade Federation's viceroy, Newt Gunray, didn't want to meet with them because he thought they were gonna threaten him into signing a deal, which is ironically the exact thing the Jedi were gonna do. So what do you do when nice monks plan to gang up on you in the meeting room? You do what any sensible person would and blow up their spaceship and try to gas them. So that's what they did, but little did they know that Jedi were trained in the arts of holding your breath. As soon as those doors opened, the Jedi came out swinging their laser swords and pushing things over with telekinesis. Going to the bridge to have aggressive negotiations with the Viceroy, they decide to melt the door, keeping them out. But as they do this, Viceroy calls for the droidekas, because according to that one dude beside Viceroy, they're no match for droidekas. Except they made a big miscalculation. They weren't just dealing with any Jedi, they were dealing with Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn. No, droidekas can actually, never mind, they're running away. Stowing away on a landing craft, they meet the most hated character in Star Wars until Rey shows up and save him from droids. But uh-oh, Dasa saved him and now his life is indebted to them. He must be their humble servant as demanded by the gods in it. Or at least that's the excuse he gives. I think he just wanted somewhere to go after being exiled. He takes them to the Gungan village where Qui-Gon uses the Force to convince King Tubby to give them a submarine. He spits goodbye to them, and so they go through the planet core, which apparently isn't molten, and end up in the capital city of Theed. But uh-oh, the droids beat them there and kidnapped the Queen. It just so happens to be that the Queen of Naboo is in Obi's and Qui-Gon's path, so they rescue her, steal a ship, and head out for the capital of the Republic, Coruscant. Except as they leave, they kind of get a little bit blown up and have to stop on a very familiar desert planet with two suns. There, they discover that slavery is not as out of style as Republic credits are, and end up gambling their life savings away on a NASCAR race, because chosen one. Well, Anakin wins the race and ends up being given to Qui-Gon, who plans to trade him as a Jedi, because he's the chosen one. But Anakin's mom isn't given to them as well, and because of that, many Tusken Raiders will soon die. Man, to think that the entire Star Wars universe would have been different if credits did do fine in buying a new hyperdrive. Well, as they attempt to leave Tatooine, Darth Maul, the latest in the line of Sith, is sent to kill everyone, because Padme is getting in the way of Palpatine's plans. Maul and Qui-Gon fight quite a bit, but everyone escapes to Coruscant, where Qui-Gon reports that the Revenge of the Sith movie is now in production and introduces its main star, Anakin Skywalker. But the Jedi don't like how he can read cups and speeders over a TV screen he can't see while thinking about his mother as any scared 9-year-old would. They say they won't teach him, but Qui-Gon says, "I will." Obi-Wan be like, "What am I, chopped liver?" As it turns out, you can't have more than one Padawan at a time, so Qui-Gon's like, Obi can handle himself. And Obi-Wan was like, "Yeah, I'm ready for the Jedi trials. Let me at it." Meanwhile, the Queen is getting ready to address the Senate, but Palpatine says that Chancellor Valorum isn't fit to be a chancellor, and will make it hard to help the people of Naboo, and sadly, that's exactly what Valorum does. So the Queen calls for a vote of no confidence, which results in Palpatine becoming the new Chancellor. Either Palp's always intended for the Queen to help him, or he's just very good at making do with what he's got. Either way, everything's coming up, Palpers. They decide to go back to Naboo to save the people, but Qui-Gon is like, if you do this, I can't protect you. But guess what? That's exactly what he does. Returning to Naboo, the Queen is revealed to actually be a decoy, with the real Queen being the handmaiden Padme. She recruits the Gungans by telling them that college education doesn't mean much, and leads an assault on the capital to capture the Viceroy. But Darth Maul is there and pokes Qui-Gon very hard with a hot stick. Obi-Wan uses his anger, proving that the dark side does have merit, and ends up cutting Maul in half. Qui-Gon makes a teenage boy promise to be a father to another almost teenage boy like it'll turn out all peachy, and Obi-Wan promises to do so. Elsewhere, Anakin is single-handedly blowing up a spaceship by himself. The Viceroy is captured, and Palpatine makes an offhanded remark about watching Anakin's career with interest. They proceed to roast Qui-Gon like a weenie in a pyre and discuss the Sith returning, and Obi-Wan says he's going to train Anakin with or without the Council's approval, but Yoda says, "Bruh, the Council was already going to say yes." This leaves Obi-Wan in an awkward place, but alas, he is victorious. A Jedi Knight and a Master of a Padawan. I'm sure nothing will go wrong. Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Lots and lots and lots of years pass. Anakin is no longer a small slave boy, but he is now taller than Obi-Wan, who's rocking a beard and a mullet like it's the 80s all over again. Padme, no longer a queen, because apparently queens are democratically elected on Naboo and have term limits but not age limits, is now a senator, and is coming to Coruscant to take part in a vote on whether or not the Republic should make its own army. She plans to vote no, so Palpatine decides to have her assassinated. But Palpatine doesn't want to do it himself, so he sends Dooku. But Dooku doesn't want to do it himself, so he sends Jango Fett. But Jango doesn't want to do it himself, so he sends Zam Wesell. But Zam doesn't want to do it herself, so she sends a robot who sends little bug things to do it. Original credit for this joke to Cinematic Series Gaming, or at least that's where I got it from. Well, Anakin and Obi-Wan are guarding her, and that's when they sense the bugs. Anakin runs into the room, jumps on the bed on top of Padme, and pulls out his lightsaber to kill the bugs crawling on her face. She must have been so terrified. Or, no, I won't make that joke. Obi-Wan, though, just decides to jump out the window. And after seeing how George Lucas writes the love story between these two later on, I'm inclined to follow him. Being led back to Zam, an awesome chase takes place where they try to show us how reckless Anakin is and how stiff Obi-Wan is. Somehow this all culminates with them drinking in a bar and Obi-Wan buying death sticks. And just like all the other big parties that involve drinking and death sticks, someone loses an arm and gets poisoned by a rogue bounty hunter using a weapon that will eventually lead Obi-Wan to the location of the bounty hunter's house. The Council sends a love-stricken Anakin to live with Padme and protect her as if certain that he's not going to be a regular 19-year-old horn dog and get married. And Obi-Wan begins to investigate a planet that no longer exists. There he meets the Kaminoans, a tall species who like to play God. He finds that they've been making clones from the DNA of the very bounty hunter he's searching for. A fight breaks out that leads Obi-Wan to Geonosis, where he discovers that the bounty hunter is working for Count Dooku, a Sith Lord. Obi gets captured and told flat that Palpatine is a Sith Lord, and instead of thinking, the clones are made by a man working for a Sith Lord and would be a convenient army to appear just as we're voting on making an army or not, but instead he just says, "Nuh-uh, you're dumb and a liar." Sometimes I wonder if Dooku wasn't right when he said Qui-Gon would join him. Heck, at this point, I'd join him and overthrow the Sith. Dooku was a horrible dude, but he wasn't that horrible, right? Elsewhere, Yoda gets the message from Obi-Wan about the army of clones and droids he's discovered. The Senate votes to give Palpatine emergency powers, likely egged on by the dumbest character in history, and with it, Palpers ratifies the usage of said army. Elsewhere, Anakin is on Naboo, but has a dream about his mother and decides to go back to Tatooine to slaughter everyone when he finds out that she's dead. And my man Anakin over here slaughtering everything he can. Trust me, this is not the last genocide he'll partake in. After that though, Padme tells him that she's gonna rescue Obi-Wan, and instead of actually stopping her, like tying her down somewhere, he just lets her and decides to go with her. They get captured. Brought to a giant coliseum where they're gonna be executed live on television, Anakin informs Obi-Wan that they came to save him. Looking at his bonds he and they're all in, he just says, "Good job." Man, Obi-Wan was a mess. Well, even if Anakin and Padme failed, the other Jedi won't. Jumping from the stands, every Jedi ever probably go to fight the droids and save Obi-Wan, but yeah, they all get captured too. That is until, wait for it, the attack of the clones! Yoda comes in with all these cool clone spaceships and zaps all the droids, rescuing the Jedi. The clones begin to mobilize against the droids and drive them off their factory planet. Anakin and Obi-Wan chase Dooku to capture him, but the attempt costs them an arm and a leg. Yoda has to come in and clean up their mess, but before he can put an end to Dooku, Dooku escapes. Oh, and also, Anakin and Padme get married, and the Clone Wars officially begin. Now, if you're expecting me to recap the entire Clone Wars TV series, you're a goober. We're sticking to the main films only today. Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Anakin and Obi-Wan are once again older. Now it's Anakin rocking the mullet, and Obi-Wan decided to get something a little more hip, modern, and with it, trying to draw attention away from the fact that he's 40-something years old. They fly their spaceships through the space above Coruscant, where these separatists, led by a guy who only really got introduced in this movie called General Grievous, kidnapped Chancellor Palpatine. As they head toward the ship where the Chancellor is, the little buzz droids land on Obi-Wan's ship, and Obi-Wan is like, well, I guess I'm dead now, and resigns himself to the grave. Yet he somehow gets upset at Anakin for trying to shoot them off, saying that he's gonna get them both killed. Anakin manages to get the buzz droids off, and they make it into the hangar and proceed to fight their way to the observation spire at the top of the ship. There they meet Count Dooku, who Anakin claims he can beat now because his powers have somehow doubled since the last week that they fought. Dooku doesn't believe it yet, but when he gets his hands chopped off, he begins to think it might have been true. Then Palpatine commands Anakin to kill him, making everyone look at Palpatine with a bruh look. But never underestimate the power of the do. With a single phrase that we all know and love, Anakin decides just to decapitate a helpless man, sending his head rolling like a soccer ball. They manage to escape by piloting the broken ship that somehow the clones thought would be a good idea to destroy while the leader of their free galaxy is still on board. They crash land at the airport and are greeted by senators and Jedi Masters. Pulled away by his waifu, Anakin learns that they're gonna have a baby, and because our boy Anakin is responsible, he does not let it consume his thoughts. He totally lets it consume his thoughts. Bro had a bad dream, and now he's deciding that he's gonna turn to the dark side and kill everyone over it. Anyway, they discover where General Grievous is and send Obi-Wan Kenobi-Wan to go shoot Bro's green bag of guts until he spontaneously combusts. Anakin, however, decides to hang out with best friend Palpy until he discovers, uh-oh, he's a Sith Lord. Anakin goes and tells Mace Windu, who gathers everyone to go arrest the leader of the Free Galaxy for being a part of a religion which apparently isn't illegal to be a part of. Despite that, Palpy does a sick spin because that's a good trick and makes the best faces known to mankind while fighting Space Nick Fury. Anakin shows up though because he's afraid Mace is gonna kill Palpatine, which is exactly what he's going to do. He tries to stop Mace but accidentally cuts off his hand. Mace screams in agony like a little baby, even Luke and Anakin didn't scream that bad, before getting chunked out of the Mace window by unlimited power. Anakin is having an existential crisis, and Palpatine is like, wanna go kill some younglings? I'm sure it'll make you feel better. And Anakin's like, sure. So they decide to execute Order 66. Anakin goes, kills all the Jedi at the temple, and all the Jedi are turned on by their clones, including Obi-Wan, who only barely escapes because he's a Chad. Escaping on General Grievous's fighter, he meets up with Yoda and Bail Organa before heading back to the Jedi Temple to undo the signal calling all Jedi home. Instead, he sends a signal telling all Jedi to never come home, because it's illegal to be a good guy now. Palpatine calls for a special session of the Senate where he says, oh, and by the way, we're not the Republic anymore. we're the Empire now, and I'm Emperor. And instead of people booing or being like, dictator, they just clap and applaud. Obi-Wan goes to visit Padme, where he's like, I always knew you and Anakin were together. Now take me to your boo so I can chop his legs off. She unknowingly does just that. Anakin, deciding that his whole mission is now a moot point, chokes out his wife and gets into a wicked lightsaber duel with Obi-Wan, but he ends up getting roasted on an open fire like a Christmas treat. Meanwhile, Yoda fights Palpatine, but loses, and into exile he must go. One last time, Yoda meets with Obi and Bail, where he decides where the now dead Padme's babies go. Leia gets adopted by Bail Organa and turned into a princess, while Luke gets adopted by his uncle and becomes a desert farmer scrounging for water. Tell me who got the best outcome. Vote in the comments below. Obi-Wan plays with his mustache as he watches the Larses take Luke away to look at the sunset. Makes me question why they didn't just name him Luke Lars and not tell him about his father, but to each their own. Obi-Wan learns how to talk to Qui-Gon, who teaches him how to become a ghost when he dies. Yoda decides to live on Dagobah, and Anakin gets some new drip while Palpatine watches. They then begin working on the Death Star. Now, this is where that TV show Kenobi takes place, along with Solo and Rogue One, but I don't really feel like covering those. As I said, we are doing only the Skywalker saga. Episode 4, A New Hope. A small spaceship is totally on a diplomatic mission to Alderaan when a big ship starts shooting at them. They board them and Darth Vader chokes a dude out, but this time, he doesn't use the Force, but his freakish strength. They find a girl wearing pajamas and cinnamon buds on her head, and Vader somehow doesn't notice that she looks a heck of a lot like Padme mixed with himself. I guess that helmet's too dense. He captures her and decides to take her to the Death Star, but unbeknownst to him, 2 droids, one of which is carrying the secret plans to said Death Star, is on its way to Tatooine, where her twin brother just so happens to be living. And wouldn't you know it, that same twin brother happens to be the one who buys these droids off a pack of Jawas who basically kidnapped these droids against their will. By the way, these droids are C-3PO and R2-D2. They've actually been in the story since Phantom Menace, but I forgot to mention them. That's okay though, because I'm pretty sure even they forgot they were in those movies. The Rebel Alliance did have their memories wiped after all. At least they did with C-3PO. Anyway, Luke is a boy with big dreams of joining the Empire as a pilot. When R2-D2 shows him a picture of Princess Leia, he can't help but mention how hot she is, starting a long line of Sweet Home Alabama jokes that will last at least until midway through Return of the Jedi. The pretty princess asks for help from Obi-Wan, and Luke assumes she means old Ben Kenobi. You see, even Luke realized it was a stupid idea to only change your first name when you go into hiding. And even then, Obi-Wan and old Ben sound so similar, he might as well have just painted "I'm the Jedi you're looking for" on the side of his house. But then again, he didn't get found, so I guess stormtroopers really are just that stupid. Also, stormtroopers are the new military force that replaced clone troopers after the end of the Clone Wars. Luke is told by his kind but not overly honest uncle to take the droids to have their memories wiped, but before he can, R2-D2 escapes. Luke hunts R2 down only to get attacked by Tusken Raiders, likely out for revenge after Anakin kinda murdered all their people 2 movies back. Right when it looks like Luke might get dead, the Tuskens are driven off when they see another Jedi who is not Anakin Skywalker show up. Them Tuskens are scarred for life. It's old Ben, who confirms that he is indeed Obi-Wan. He then says, "You're a space wizard, Harry," and gives Luke a flashy lightsaber that he stole from the crispy body of Anakin. Obi-Wan then says, "Come and join me on a damn fool adventure." But despite always complaining about how he has to do chores and can't adventure, Luke declines, saying he's got chores to do. When he gets home though, he discovers that his chores are already done, as are his aunt and uncle. With nothing left to his name, he follows Obi-Wan to the spaceport where he meets Han Solo, who shot first, poor Greedo, and Chewbacca, and hires them to take them to Alderaan to help Bail Organa, but when they get there, it turns out Alderaan got blown away by the Death Star. They get pulled into the Death Star by its tractor beam and have to escape. During this time, they find Leia, who says, "Aren't you a little short to be a stormtrooper?" Despite the obvious insult to his height, Luke tells her that he's here with Obi-Wan and they decide to escape, but not before kissing at least once. For luck! Through a trash compactor and a big hangar filled with stormtroopers, they make it back to Han's ship, only to find Obi-Wan fighting Anakin. Deciding that he wants to teach Luke how much dying sucks, Obi-Wan holds up his lightsaber and disappears into a Force ghost the moment Vader strikes him. Luke and the others escape, but Luke is very sad at having lost the best friend he only met about an hour ago. They go to Yavin 4 and tell them that the Death Star can be destroyed. Looking over the plans, they decide to send in a tiny little X-Wing starfighter to shoot the little manhole that apparently leads to all the redstone and TNT at the core of the Death Star. But the issue is, where is the Death Star? Oh look, they just got a report that the Death Star just went zoomies past Yavin 1, 2, and 3, and is now conveniently waiting for them just outside. They scramble their fighters, but Vader decides to try spinning, because that's a good trick, and kills everyone but Luke, who despite having aim assist and an aimbot, something I'm sure a lot of Battlefront 2 players are experiencing right now, Luke decides not to be an absolute trash bag of a player, and decides not to use hacking, instead using intuition to shoot those torpedoes. And what do you know? He wins the game for his team, blowing up the Death Star. Then everyone gets a medal except Chewbacca, because the Rebel Alliance is racist. Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. Despite winning the battle, they had to move because now they've been doxxed by the Empire. They decide to live on the coldest planet known to mankind, but the Empire finds them and Luke gets kidnapped by the Bumble from Rudolph. He escapes when he takes a lot more from it than just its teeth. He nearly gets frostbitten on his everything, but Han rescues him by shoving him into the guts of his fuzzy dinosaur. Luke takes his sweet time in the full-body hot tub, and Leia watches him sleep underwater in his undies before kissing him again on the lips like he's not her brother. Seriously, I know George didn't want us to know who was family to who, but did he really need to go this far? Is this why he hated Mara Jade? She wasn't biologically kin enough to Luke? Or was it because he thought she was too attractive? Yeah. Looks like bro really wanted all the women in Star Wars to be modest. Anyway, the Empire finds them, and so they send AT-ATs after them, big four-legged walking battle tanks. But guess what? The rebels know their secret weakness, tying their shoelaces together. Despite having the ultimate key to victory, the rebels still lose, and Luke escapes to train with Yoda, who pretends to be a very silly old man, but apparently isn't that silly and teaches Luke to do or do not because there is no try. Elsewhere, Han, Leia, Chewbacca, and the droids are chased by the Empire. They hide in a giant worm and realize that that wasn't such a good idea when they start getting digested by stomach acid and, I guess, gut bats? Leia hates Minox, but I'm not gonna lie, I think they're kinda cute. If I had a Star Wars OC, he'd be a space pirate with one leg, a robo-eye, and a pet Minox on his shoulder. Arg! Escaping to Bespin, the Empire sends Boba Fett after them to capture them. They land in Cloud City, where Han meets up with Laszlo Calamari, a very eccentric guy who loves capes and is played by Billy D. Williams. They're betrayed by Laszlo, who turns them over to Vader and has Han frozen in carbonite and used to lure Luke there. Luke leaves his training too early and goes to Bespin, where he fights Vader while a remorseful Laszlo Calamari tries to help Chewbacca and Leia save Han, but they're too late. Boba is taking Han to pay his taxes. Leia and the others escape, but just barely. Luke finishes fighting Vader and gets his hand chopped off like a pirate. Arg! Vader then tells Luke the famous, "I am your father" line, and Luke decides he doesn't want to live anymore, and so he jumps off into the big chasm. And Vader's like, well damn. Luke gets rescued by Laszlo and the others, and he's taken to the Outer Rim, where he gets a robo-hand and decides to dress in all black, because I guess now he wants to look like Darth Vader? Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. Luke sends droids to Jabba the Hutt, who is now using Han as a very stylish bookend, and says he's gonna give him C-3PO and R2-D2 as a peace offering in hopes of buying Han off of him. Leia shows up and tries to break Han out, but fails and is forced to wear a bikini for the next few scenes because George Lucas loves modest women. Luke eventually shows up, but is dropped into the Rancor pit, where he has to kill the giant monster with nothing but a bone and a very big metal door. Succeeding, he's taken to walk the plank and jump into a big sand monster's mouth, but thankfully Laszlo Calamari's here to set him free, and R2-D2 sends him his lightsaber, making me wonder why Luke just didn't keep his lightsaber to begin with and threaten Jabba with it. This seems like a lot of wasted movement. A skilled tactician, Luke is not. Boba Fett goes to help fight Luke, but the temporarily blinded Han Solo accidentally knocks him into the Sarlacc pit, spawning a whole TV show about Boba. Leia chokes Jabba to death with a telephone or something and kisses Luke again before they escape. However, instead of Luke going with them to the rebel meeting place, he goes to Dagobah, where he meets with Yoda, who's decided he's too old for this crap and freaking dies. Luke then questions Obi-Wan about Vader being his father, and Obi-Wan's like, "Ooh, did I forget to tell you that? Good thing I didn't forget to tell you that Leia was your sister. No telling how much kissing you would have done if I forgot." Oh, no. Luke leaves to join the rebels, where they mention that the Empire is building a second Death Star because the first one worked so well, and that they need to knock out the shields on the Forest Moon to be able to fly inside of the Death Star and shoot it in the Redstone TNT port again. Luke and everyone else go to blow up the shield generator while the rebels appear outside of Endor, but oh no! A big space battle happens where the rebels learn that the key to blowing up the Star Destroyers is to blow up those big mushroom things on the bridge and then fly into them kamikaze style. Luke gets captured by Vader after telling Leia that she's just joined the weirdest family in the world and confronts the Emperor, who's like, "Do it," when asking Luke to join their little cult. Luke and Vader fight, and he chops off Vader's hand, revealing that Vader already lost that hand, and all the other hands too, a long time ago in a galaxy not so far away. Palpatine tries to make Luke do it, but Luke throws away his lightsaber and then gets tased. But Vader's like, "No!" and tosses the Emperor down a shaft to his death. I'm sure Palpatine won't somehow return later. Vader then takes his helmet off and dies. Han destroys the shield generator, and Laszlo blows up the Death Star. The whole galaxy celebrates the death of the first trilogy's main character, and Hayden Christensen is superimposed on top of poor Sebastian Shaw, whose only appearance was as maskless Darth Vader. From here, I'm sure the Empire is forever ended. There are no more movies after this. Episode 7, The Force Awakens. Damn. So, I haven't seen these movies in like a few good years, but I'll try to cover them for your viewing pleasure, or displeasure, or whatever you want. The Empire isn't dead. They fled to the unexplored regions of space and became the First Order, and the son of Han and Leia, Ben, turned to the dark side after Luke accidentally thought about killing him one time because he was so evil. Ben joined a new villain called Snoke, and became the new Darth Vader, even getting a mask to cover his perfectly normal face, something Snoke hilariously makes fun of him for in the next movie. Ben, now named Kylo Ren, and his Knights of Ren head out to destroy Luke's new Jedi Order, which works. Luke, being oh so sad from this, decides to pull a Yoda and stop being a Jedi forever and ever, and flees to a planet called Ahch-To, where the first Jedi, Optimus Prime, once lived. The New Republic, headed by Princess Leia, who is now separated from Han Solo, sends Poe Dameron to this planet, whose name I don't remember, to get, like, a piece of a map to where Luke lives? And he gives it to his droid BB-8, but Kylo and the First Order raid the camp, kill everyone, and capture Poe. A stormtrooper named Finn, who really hates his job, decides he doesn't want to be a bad guy anymore, and so he helps Poe escape, except they crash land on Jakku, which makes it look like Poe died, though somehow he didn't? Finn loots Poe's jacket for himself and tries to get BB-8 back, but he runs into Rey Skywalker. Sorry, just Rey. The First Order tracks them down and goes about their standard business of killing everyone. But Rey and Finn escape on the Millennium Falcon, which just so happens to be on Jakku for some reason, and just barely manage to escape. But they are then captured by what I guess is a space garbage truck? And once inside, they find Han Solo and Chewbacca, who are back to doing illicit crimes to make ends meet. But just like before, Han is in debt with like 3 different groups who all decide to come collect right then and there. Han sets loose a group of dangerous creatures and they all escape to the Falcon. They need to get to where the rebels live, but they don't know how. So Han takes them to Taco Bell, where he meets up with a lady with very small eyes who just so happens to be Chewbacca's girlfriend. And there Rey discovers Luke's severed hand, probably, and the old Skywalker heirloom of the blue lightsaber. It's then that the First Order shows up and begins to blow Taco Bell up, but everyone tries to fight, and Rey ends up losing that lightsaber and is captured by Kylo Ren. Finn picks up the blue lightsaber and begins to use it against some dude with a big taser baton and somehow wins like it's impressive to beat a single stormtrooper. Rey is taken to Starkiller Base and kinda tortured with mind tricks, but turns it on Kylo and tells him he's kind of a wuss compared to Darth Vader, which Snoke pretty much agrees with. The rebels get the map back but can't use it because R2-D2 has the other map pieces, but decide to forever sleep because he's depressed. Starkiller Base destroys the New Republic's capital, and in return Princess Leia says they need to blow it up right back. So they send a fighter squadron there in hopes of blowing up some reactor thing. Han, Finn, and Chewbacca land on Starkiller to find Rey and weaken the infrastructure of the big thingy that also needs to be destroyed, but despite Rey being okay and escaping with Finn, Han Solo gets one-shot by his own son. Chewbacca shoots Kylo Ren in the guts with his bowcaster. Vader never would have let that happen, and blows up bombs, weakening the infrastructure. Poe flies in because he's actually alive and starts blowing stuff up, while Finn and Rey fight Kylo, all of which want Anakin's lightsaber that killed a lot of younglings in its day, but in the end Rey uses the Force and cuts Kylo's face off. Everyone escapes as Starkiller Base blows up. R2-D2 then wakes up and shows them where Luke lives, so Rey goes to get training. Episode 8, The Last Jedi. The First Order is retaliating against the New Republic, who, now that there is no Republic, I guess are just the rebels again. Poe decides to blow up one of the First Order's Star Destroyers, but Leia says, "Please don't, we can't afford to all die," but Poe says, "Screw you, lady, I know best," and proceeds to show exactly why he didn't know best. They actually managed to take the Star Destroyer down, but a lot of people died. Meanwhile, the Rebel fleet is now being tracked by Snoke's own personal giant stealth bomber and fleet, hoping to kill them all. Elsewhere, Luke is given his old lightsaber and tosses it away because "I'm not a Jedi anymore." He goes and drinks blue milk straight from the everyman's nipple, which is as disgusting as you'd think. In the end, Rey kinda convinces Luke to train her, but she has a tendency to go straight for the dark side, so he gets apprehensive about doing so. Elsewhere, Finn and the new character, whose name I forgot, who I don't think ever shows up again, travels to this planet where they gamble all the time to get the help of some guy who can break codes and stuff, so they can break into Snoke's ship and disable whatever computer is allowing him to track them through hyperspace. Fleeing back to their fleet, they use Finn's stormtrooperiness to get through security. Meanwhile, Rey, having left to confront Snoke and Kylo, gets sucked into Snoke's ship, where she's brought to the throne room, where Snoke, wearing his fabulous gold bathrobe, sits in a big red room and taunts everyone as if he were Palpatine or something. He gets a rude awakening when he proves he's not Palpers, and Kylo cuts bro in half. Kylo and Rey then kill all the Praetorian guards. Now, while the sequels may have had some questionable storytelling, they do have good visual effects, and some really cool ideas. I really liked the Praetorian guards in this movie, and this scene has to be my favorite in the whole sequel trilogy, though that might be saying something. Anyway, after they kill Snoke and his guards, Rey and Kylo decide to fight over Grandpa's lightsaber, which ends with them snapping it in half with an explosion that knocks everyone out. Rey wakes up first though and decides to escape before Hux finds Kylo. The rebels discover that they can't so easily escape, so the lady who's in charge now that Leia is indisposed from taking a short spacewalk without a suit decides to hyperspace ram Snoke's ship, pretty much soloing the whole First Order fleet. The rebels escape to Crate where they hole up, but the First Order finds them and Hux gets ragdolled because Kylo is tired of the wannabe Tarkin yapping in his ear. However, old Luke Skywalker shows up and decides to challenge Kylo Ren, but reveals himself to only be a shadow clone used to keep Kylo busy while the rebels escape. Luke then dies because his contract is up and he doesn't really like being in the sequel trilogy. Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. In this movie, we see Rey, having repaired the lightsaber, and I forget how this happened, so I'll just say it now, is given Leia's lightsaber at some point in time. She's training and getting good at using the Force because I guess it's something you can just tap into without a Jedi Master now. Elsewhere, Kylo fights across Mustafar where he finds Vader's hidden Wayfinder holocron, which leads him to Exegol where we realize that Palpatine has somehow returned. In a somewhat nice callback to the Dark Empire comic series, we learn that Palpatine has been cloning himself and transferring his essence to these new bodies, but they don't last long because they're so weak and he's so wicked and strong. He basically comes out as the new Supreme Leader, choosing to make Ben his new Vader and sending him to bring Rey in. Rey ends up going on a mission to find Exegol to stop Palpers and his fleet of planet-killing Star Destroyers, whose names now seem to fit. To this end, she gets sent to this sandy planet to find a Sith dagger, which she does, but she can't read what it says. C-3PO says he can read it, but to do so is actually illegal, so they're gonna have to jailbreak his systems to get the intelligence from him. At that time, Kylo finds Rey on this planet and tries to run her over with his spaceship as if Palpy didn't tell him just moments before, "Hey, bring her to me alive." Rey manages to do a sick flip and destroys Kylo's ship. However, Chewbacca is captured, and in trying to rescue him with the Force, Kylo tries to unrescue him with the Force, which pisses Rey off, who somehow gets so mad that she shoots lightning from her hand and kills Chewbacca. Or so she thought. It was actually another transport. Chewie was very much still alive. They end up heading to whatever planet the best character, Babu Frick, lives on, and there Rey discovers Chewie is still alive, and decides to rescue him while everyone else tries to get that info from C-3PO. They manage to get the info, but 3PO's memory is wiped. Kylo and Rey fight again, and here we get the big reveal that Rey isn't actually a Skywalker or anything, but actually a Palpatine, and that the Emperor is her grampy. Escaping again, they learn that the next Wayfinder is on Endor on a chunk of the blown-up Death Star. Now, the whole time I watched this, I was wondering, how did the ancient Sith know the Death Star was gonna blow up and land here? But I guess the new Sith from the Sith Eternal were the ones using, like, ancient artifacts to find stuff, and I don't know. But Rey goes to the Death Star and has a vision that she's gonna be evil and have a badass lightsaber. Kylo shows up and destroys the Wayfinder. The two fight, and Princess Leia uses the Force to send Kylo a message, which distracts him long enough for Rey to stab him. But Bro too ennui and just sits down like, oh well, I don't care anymore. Sensing that Leia is dead, Rey feels bad, heals his wound, and runs away. Han Solo shows up as a Force ghost because I guess anyone can just learn the path to immortality now, even if they're not a Jedi? Why didn't anyone tell this before Qui-Gon? Or is Bro just teaching everyone now? Han tells Kylo to throw his badass lightsaber into the ocean, and Kylo does so, deciding to stop being Vader and just to be Ben Solo now. Rey steals Ben's TIE fighter and just lands on Ahch-To, where she decides to become a hermit just like Luke, but Luke's ghost makes her go back to Babu Frick's planet to help her friends. Using Luke's X-Wing and Ben's Wayfinder, she tells the rebels to follow her to Exegol, where she and Ben decide to fight Palpatine. Rey gives Ben Anakin's lightsaber with some Force magic, and Ben kills all the Knights of Ren. There they confront Palpatine and all of his adoring fans, where Palpatine tells her to kill him and let him possess her. She's like, nah dog, I like being me. Palpatine then hits him with electricity and discovers that the same Force magic BS that's linked Ben and Rey together is the same kinda BS he needs to make his clone body viable. So he sucks the magic out of him and begins to destroy the rebels with his Force lightning. Rey then somehow apparently becomes all of the Jedi and uses both lightsabers to zap Palpatine with his own lightning. Bro never learns. Palpatine gets toasted by himself and evaporates, and Rey ends up kinda dead. But Ben uses a magic Force kiss to bring her back to life, dying instead. Also, due to Palpatine kinda making Anakin with Plagueis, and this is canon, that makes Palpatine technically Anakin's dad, and so this kinda makes Rey and Ben cousins. What is it with Star Wars and making family members kiss so much? The Sith all then die when the cave collapses on them, and the First Order gets destroyed too. Rey then goes back to Tatooine, to the Lars farm, where she buries Luke and Leia's lightsabers in the backyard before revealing she built her own pretty yellow one. Some random lady who we never saw before and will never see again simply shows up and asks, "Who are you?" And Rey's like, "I'm Rey, Rey Skywalker." Then the movie ends. Thank heavens. And that is, for better or worse, the whole Skywalker saga, I guess. Most people agree that the sequels were garbage, but that's not universal, and even if I did make fun of them a little, I hope any sequel enjoyers don't hold it against me. They had their moments, and a lot of people will disagree with me when I say that The Last Jedi was actually a pretty good movie as a standalone. And compared to most movies these days, the sequels were actually pretty fun. But anyway, that's the whole saga. What did you think about the movies though? Are you a prequel main, sequel main, or just an OG enjoyer? Let us know in the comments below, and if someone does say sequel main, please respect them, guys. I don't want to see no hate down there, or so help me, I'll pull my belt on y'all and add your lightsabers to my collection. Be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell to be notified of our other videos, and be sure to check out these other cool videos from our channel. Until next time, peace, my Padawan learners, and may the Force be with you, always.